if you're given a given task, tote it all the way. Not only do the task, but follow up. Was your client happy? Did it deliver what they needed? Follow up and follow through in life. That's usually what wins you some praise and wins you some business.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Jonathan Strack. Jonathan is the CEO of Strack Inc., a full-service contractor for heavy civil construction that's operating in 8 southeastern states. Jonathan started his career at Strack at 12 years of age as a laborer. And I love this quote. He writes, "I learned what it means to be a good leader from the greatest man and mentor that anyone could ever have, my father, Joe Strack." Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I understand Strack is a family-owned / run business. When did Strack start as a company?
We were founded in 1948 by my grandfather. He came to Atlanta to take over payments on a D6 bulldozer that he co-signed on with his brother, and his brother stopped paying the payments. So he moved to Atlanta post-World War II in 1948 and started grading. He was a trucker by trade. And as we've moved along, we've kind of grown with the city. We started out, you typical one-man band, worked a whopping 10-mile radius around College Park, Georgia, which is near the airport for folks that aren't familiar with Metro Atlanta, and have really steadily grown with the city. We've been blessed in that regard to be in a good, hot area of the country.
Well, we're practically neighbors. I'm about an hour north of you as we record. Jonathan, you may not know, we have listeners literally all over the world. So I'm glad you pointed out that you're kind of at least corporately based in the metro Atlanta, and that's Atlanta, Georgia, for those who don't know where Atlanta might be. When I describe your business as heavy civil construction, I have a pretty good sense of what that means. I also have your website readily available. What does that mean? For those who don't know what heavy civil construction is, what does that mean?
All right. So heavy civil construction really encompasses everything typically before you build a structure or any kind of dwelling. It encompasses clearing, grading, underground utility installation, concrete work, building of a roadway, can be anything all the way through bridges, lighting, dam and reservoir work, anything like that. For us, we self-perform drilling and blasting, boring and tunneling, grading, and water, sewer, and storm drain pipe and installation. Those are our really main self-performed trades.
Yeah, Jonathan, in our conversation before we scheduled this podcast, you shared with me a little bit of this family history. This business was started by your grandfather. You are third generation. What are the kinds of things that you, as a third generation leader within a company that bears your own name, what are those things that have stuck with you in your tenure? You started at age 12, and I know we have no Department of Labor folks listening to this, but you started off as a laborer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So, Dad started working for his dad at 10. I started working for my dad at 12. We both really grew up essentially the same way. We were laborers and then later in life operators and superintendents and, ran various parts of the business before we ever started running the business itself. one of my real takeaways from thinking about my childhood is, I had a great group of men and women to learn from that all really ended up being representatives of what became our core values. And, when we thought about who we were, there were definite individuals that represented, diligence, hard work, grit, honesty, being a good servant leader. There were all these different folks I learned all these skills from, from my dad. And when we sat down and formulated our core values years later, when we realized we needed to do such things, I really got to thinking a whole lot about the folks that taught us when I was growing up.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's those core values I would like for us to spend most of our time on today, because it really not only caught my attention, but it really kind of resonated with me. And I think it will resonate with our listeners. Our listeners are leaders. They may be business owners. They may be business leaders. And I think what we're about to discuss is a perfect illustration on how you went back and captured those core values, recognizing this business has been around for a long time, since 1948. Why don't we start with that very first one? I don't know if these are in prioritized order, but this is the ones that I started off with, and that is humble hearts, open hands.
Yeah. So, all right. To really, there's a little preface, I guess, before I discuss all the core values. They all flow from really one segment. Some folks are religious, some aren't, but ours really represent the fruit of the Spirit, which comes from Galatians 5:22 and 5:23, and it is. Our four values really encapsulate all those things that are the fruit of the Spirit. But humble hearts, open hands was our effort as a team to try and describe to the rest of the world who we are and what we represent. And we lead from a servant leadership standpoint. And our belief is, if you put others before yourself, usually anybody will follow you, and any discussion about profitability usually fixes itself, because you've got really motivated people that want to do a good job and care about what they're doing if they see their leadership care about it. So that's part of the humble hearts, open hands. The open hand, the other piece of it is, we're generous with our time, our resources, our dollars, and really our care as well. Corporately, we are glass half full as a culture. So we're much more willing to give a hand up and lead gracefully and give folks lots of opportunity, even though they may not deserve it. But, that's life, and that's the standard we're going to choose to set. And it's not real common in the world of business anymore either. So it usually gets you some attention in a good way.
When one thinks humble hearts, open hands, one might think that you're just kind of going through the motions, not necessarily concerned about growth. And a growing, thriving company is good for all involved. Your company has grown significantly since the late 40s. You've gotten into a number of areas that expanded kind of the core offerings. Better every day is the second core value. Can you kind of incorporate that, and how does that fit into maintaining a growing organization?
Yeah, our industry is one that's really different than what society teaches now, right? What in life do our young men and women not get a chance to do over if they need to? We're in a business that really demands you do something right at a real high quality standard the first time.
Yes.
And that requires a lot of diligence, a lot of effort, and a lot of care, and you cannot have complacency in your business. The minute you do is the minute you start failing and getting worse at what you're doing. And the better everyday piece, the other part of the the core value, or the descriptor for it is, quality doesn't happen by mistake either. It's diligent effort. And, the other meaning behind it is really born out of the great financial crisis. We went through an exceptionally hard time, like our industry and our country did, from really our industry from 2008 to about 2012. In our area, at least, it was a really, really tough time. And as we ran around all over the Southeast doing work, trying to stay alive and survive, me in particular, I made some promises to myself. And I said, boy, I never want to go through this ever again. And I'm going to work really hard at whatever I've got to do every day to make us better and stronger. And, whatever, no matter what that is, whether it's a craft trade skill, or, some form of knowledge we need, or just, focusing on a specific sector of business or part of our business internally, just methodically day after day, giving good effort towards making this place better and really enriching the lives of everybody around us. That's
Jonathan. I've had a good opportunity in my career to go work for small companies that kept growing and growing and growing. I love to work with growing companies because I know growing companies presents a whole set of challenges. It's good on one hand, but it also can result in growing pains. You have expanded into at least 8 states. And when you begin expanding, when your footprint geographically is expanding and the things you're doing continues to get more and more complicated, what are some of the biggest challenges as CEO that you have found to maintain that ability to get better every day while also growing at the pace that y'all are?
Yeah, so rapid growth brings about a whole lot of change and a whole lot of different standards coming into your organization. What we found, for instance, we grew pretty heavily right up until the great financial crisis, contracted, and then started over again, exiting the financial crisis. And at one point, we decided to start grading, and we grew from 175 folks to about 425 folks in size in 15 months.
Goodness.
And had a whole bunch of really good people come to work with us, but their standards and how they treated people and communicated were far different than ours. And, we sat down as a team, and all the while we have this, really large workforce development issue, particularly in our industry. And we sat down as a group and said, all right, we need to start talking about ourselves, being our best advocate. We've got to go set the standard and direct the narrative. And as a team, we sat down and decided what's aggravating us. And we literally made a list really did a branding workshop over about 2 days and filled up 6 whiteboards full of ideas and turned those into a training program. We call it Frontline Leadership Training. It's 6 days of content over 6 months, taught and led by us that lead the business, along with the help of a facilitator named Wally Adamchick. He helped us do some of the soft skills side of what we do. But, really it's about, you got to start getting comfortable about talking about yourself, setting a standard, and continually reinforcing that. Just because you say it once doesn't mean it's going to happen.
So this is kind of illustrating the core concept of mindful in everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mindful in everything. That was the hardest one to come up with as a team. For us, you can either call it, depending on how you're trained, it could be second order thinking. It is always having somewhat of a questioning attitude in a respectful way, meaning a little further that no matter what we do, we're good stewards of what we're given. We care about it, and we really take time to be intentful and purposeful about what we're doing and run it to ground, per se, meaning, if you're given a given task, tote it all the way. Not only do the task, but follow up, figure out, was your client happy? Did it deliver what they needed? Did it pass inspection? Whatever it may be, that follow up and follow through in life, that's usually what wins you some praise and wins you some business. And that's really where the mindful and everything is. And the other soft skill of it is start caring about what's going on around you and who you work with. The idea for some of our crews, like our grading crews, they show up, they may get on 20 different pieces of equipment all day, and they're kind of siloed off to themselves. They've got radios to communicate, but there's not a whole lot of idle chatter going on most of the time. Sure, Friday afternoon, they'll be talking about what they're doing. But, the mindful piece is, hey, if you got a coworker, that's going through a divorce, death in the family, something like that, sit down, eat lunch with them, maybe get them exposed to our corporate chaplains, that we've got one on staff, and we've got a third party service that helps from a counseling standpoint. And that's really all our values have a professional piece and then kind of a soft skills. I'd call it a humanity focused piece, really. So that's mindful and everything for us.
Well, you also back that up, and that is you have actually built a training facility for that to be housed in part, where you bring people in. What I also liked is the fact that you have, let me say it right, simulators, be it 10-star and CAT simulators. When you made the comment about you have to train people for your company because it's just the challenge you have in finding qualified people, you all basically took that to heart and basically says, we're going to bring people in and make sure they have the skills they need to be successful. Can you elaborate a little bit about why training has been such an important part of Strack and your growth?
Yeah, for the training piece, I mean, one, it's about setting your standard for what you expect up front from day one. Two, we say it all the time. What people want hasn't changed, from 18 to 80 years old. They want to be appreciated for what they do, treated like a normal, regular person, and be able to kind of live life on their own means, which requires some financial stability. So all this chatter about, young people don't want to work. Well, hey, we raised this generation, we've got to go reset the standard and go teach what that standard is. And that's where the training conversation for us started. It was kind of like, what's ticking us off? Why is it ticking us off? And let's go figure it out. And, it's a lot of it's a communication standard. Some of it is, that's part of why we started social media marketing. If you want to have any kind of hiring and retention going on, that's really your first interaction. We have a training platform that's provided by a company called BuildWit, and their founder, Aaron Witt. When I asked him, I said, where'd this idea come from? You built this really intuitive training platform that's on a phone, on a tablet, on a computer, and it's got stuff about life skills, budgeting, how to talk to people, counseling. It'll teach you how to measure a block of wood and how to read a tape measure. It's as basic as that. It explains why piping has different colors, all these kind of things, real basic things that everybody's kind of scared to ask a question for. And he says, Jonathan, you got to go to where your workforce is. And he says, we're on a call like this. And he says, that's this. It holds his phone up, and he's right. I mean, what do you do when you first get up in the morning? Look at your phone. I mean, it's what you do very little in life without that device anymore. So that's kind of where that started. And then it progressed into, we keep turning workers over, and, how are we ever going to get culture to stick if we can't train them to be how we want them to be and keep them? And hey, we're still in the middle of this right now. I'm not saying we've got this entirely figured out, but we're at least trying something right now.
As you know, Jonathan, my business is kind of a blend of consulting and coaching. The consulting more often than not results in organizations owning up that they usually do a pretty decent job on the technical training, but those soft skills training oftentimes just doesn't get addressed. And it sounds like y'all almost started with those because it just wasn't working. And that's just kind of baked in to what y'all are doing. I want to get to this fourth principle, and that is everyone matters. You've kind of hinted at that in some of the comments you've already made thus far, but can you kind of fill in what you all mean when you say everyone matters?
Yeah, and I mean, it's flatly what it says. I mean, anybody you encounter in life, you're no better than they are. And it really goes back to the servant leadership principle. That doesn't mean that you are a doormat either. It's about setting a standard and setting that bar high for folks to reach towards as well, too. I think that's one of the things that gets lost right now in hiring and workforce development, especially with some gaps in how our workforce views things from generation to generation. You know, I go back to, again, you know, a lot of these, you hear a lot of narrative around young people don't want to work. It's telling you that's not the case. Like, these folks are smart. They're one of the smartest generations that's ever been raised. These folks that are, you know, 15 to 25 years old right now. Yes. It's trying to figure out how to motivate them. And you know, in years past, you know, how would I put it? The hero leader was what folks looked to. You know, they wanted somebody they looked up to. They wanted that general, you know. Now they want to serve it. They want somebody down on their level that'll talk, explain, and mentor to them what's going on. And that's really the attitude we try and have throughout the business is, look, we're here to help. We're here to be kind and give you a hand up, give you lots of chances, allow you to fail. But there's also a standard too. You know, you need to be given best effort all the time. If you're not, if you're apathetic, you don't care about your fellow man and woman or their safety, then yeah, we're not the place for you. And we make that apparent pretty quick. But outside of that, as long as you're caring, you know, everybody does matter. But you know, when folks violate those core values, you know, you got to be willing to move them off the boat too. Those we call them mercenaries. So the high skilled, low culture folks that erode your company from within, you can't allow that. Like, once you set this standard of these values, you got to live up to them. And that everyone matters piece is the one that's always the one that gets the most attention when you've got to make hard decisions, you know, based around performance, ethics, and attitude. And, you know, those are the qualifiers. And you always have to go back to who you are, always be a good representative of them. And then once you are and you set that standard and you folks figure out you really do care about them as a company and as leadership team, you get one of the best environments you could ever dream of for a workplace.
I really appreciate, Jonathan, when you made reference to the generation that's entering the workplace. People tend to forget we have up to 5 generations in the workplace now. We tend to only think about the younger generations, but each of those generations kind of had its own set of experiences. You know, I'm mindful your business started right after World War II. And that generation's oftentimes referred to as the greatest generation. But in terms of how that probably resulted in things getting done, it probably was more reflective of more kind of a military, get it done, follow orders, don't question authority. And now here we are recording this podcast in 2024, whereas what you're saying is that those younger generations, what really appeals to them is not the authority figure per se, but it's the servant leader.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, you got to understand their perspective too. As we onboard these younger folks, we do a 5-day orientation, and day 4 of our orientation involves a goals session. We ask the folks at the beginning of the day, they get a sheet of paper and it says, hey, write your 1, 5, and 10-year goals down for yourself. And we make it clear, it could be professional, this could be personal, it could be both. And a lot of people have never been asked that question. And then to their surprise, we ask these people to stand up, state these goals in front of the room of new hires and trainers. And our belief is, if you believe enough to chase your goals, you're brave enough to say them in front of some strangers you probably barely know. If you're not willing to do that, you don't believe in them enough to go get them. And, we get a lot of really cool and moving stories when this happens. You build some relational capital. But the other thing I've continued to see is, from a societal standard, some of these younger folks, they don't have a whole lot of hope that they're ever going to get a slice of what some of us have been given in life, the American dream per se. And, trying to, there's a really good diamond in there surrounded by all this crust. I feel like you've got to chip it off. And, you're trying to really sell them and convince them that, hey, you're limited by your attitude and your work ethic in our environment. And if you do want a piece of that, it's perfectly attainable without college debt, and, some of the folks, they don't realize that, or, they're hearing this day one from some, perspective that they expect to hear it from. And it's not really until they get out amongst peers that they figure out, all right, we really are trying to live what we're saying up front. And sure, it doesn't 100% happen in the field. I'll be the first one to tell you that we're not all perfect every day. And unfortunately, you do get somebody out there that's not maintaining your standard from time to time, but it's, people remember you in business and in life for how you act when bad stuff's happening, when fire's flying at you, and a good leader steps in front of their team, not behind them when that happens. So that's us in a nutshell. And if you stay with us long enough, you'll get to witness it firsthand. And, we're here. Our saying is empowered to build. That's our slogan. So our whole tagline is based around the fact that we're going to give our team the best tools they can to succeed on the job and in life. So in summary, we empower our people. That's where it comes from.
I love that tagline because it means it has a level of depth to it that applies in true business sense, in personal sense, and beyond. Jonathan, you've already kind of hinted at a number of these incidences in your career and maybe in the life of your company, but could you share maybe an example where either you or the organization found itself stuck? And when that did happen, what did it take to get unstuck?
Whoa. All right. So I'd say for us, it really revolves around what's happened recently as far as hiring and retention. How do we find people? For our business in particular, we're asking people to drive to work a long day, drive home. It's that time away from home that really hurts our industry in particular. And it's just really not appetizing for, especially younger folks coming in the workforce and folks that are older, maybe single moms or anything like that. There's a time constraint. So, as a team, we're frustrated. We need help. We've got more work and more opportunity than we've ever had in our industry. I think we will continue to have it the rest of our career because, as a society, we have neglected trade skills and basic service positions for 40 years. So the way we look at it is, the ones of us that can do the work competently and well and have the workforce, it's not going to be about price. It's going to be about capability for a while, and we should get paid really well for it. And we should be able to treat our folks well and pay them well in turn. And that's what we started trying to do. So this is when we started sitting down and we hired dedicated recruiting folks. We have folks, all they do now, they go out to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, trade shows. We just finished Skills USA's competition inside the World Congress Center. And what we're doing, we're trying to expose everybody to our industry, show them that, hey, there is a home for you. Even if you don't want to be on a piece of equipment, we have marketing folks, we have accounting folks, we have legal folks, just like any other company. You know, we're no different. I've got a photographer on staff that used to be our lube technician, you know. So there's opportunities for advancement. You know, this guy was great at shooting hunting photography and landscape photography and you know, folks move it. I'm like, well, this is everything we do. You know? So you want to come do it for us? So that's how that started. And, you know, this is where our simulators come in. The simulators they're a good way to vet somebody up front and give them a good first pass, and do some basic skills qualification. Frankly, they're also, you know, catchy and you'll get some attention from them. It's a good way to expose somebody who's really technologically proficient anyway, but maybe has not given our industry a look. And the last thing we've started doing, we have an engagement manager, meaning, so we set this standard week one and have this really cool 1 week orientation. Then we dump these folks out in the field.
Yeah.
And this standard isn't being met because this is a really slow burn cultural initiative, right? So just kind of like, I phrased it kind of like workers' comp case management. The success or failure of the case is how you manage it in the first 30 days. Well, it's the same thing with the people. These people that we're trying to get in the industry, you know, they may not understand what's required of them real well on the job, or, you know, they may have an extra gruff supervisor or maybe one that's not explaining to them. And their trusted advocate now is this engagement manager and or one of the training folks that's brought them along. And they're kind of the third party advocate within the company that is the mediator per se, that says, all right, you know, we get a call from the supervisor that says, all right, we got a dozer guy out here that he can't run this finished dozer. You know, we can put him on a compactor, or he knocked dirt down, but he can't finish. And we get to go back, have a conversation and say, all right, bud, you know, you're not up to snuff for us. We're not saying you can't get there, but this is a whole different standards discussion, and we will offer you a reduction in pay, or, you know, we can no longer employ you at this position. And, or it's, hey, give this guy a chance. I've seen this guy or gal, what they can do. And they've proved to me we've got an 8-acre proving ground with brand new pieces of equipment, what they can do. You know, let me come out there. I'll see you tomorrow at 7:00. And let's go really figure out, does this person know what you're saying they do or don't know? So just trying to have a good advocate for the new hires, and then prove to them that we do care about them and we do want to figure out how to make sure this place is for them.
Jonathan, I think it's noteworthy. You have a 5-day orientation. Many companies are proud that they have a 5-hour orientation, and you don't stop there. You realize how critical, particularly early on in the tenure, a new employee, they have to really be able to kind of see what really is this company all about, and get plugged in and begin to kind of see firsthand some of these core values that you have shared with us today. As you kind of reflect on this conversation, what do you want the takeaways to be?
You know, it really goes back to how you treat people and how you interact with them in life and in the workplace defines who you are, where you're headed. what you want to be. And, you know, for us, it goes back to being humble, setting some standards, and, you know, try and do that on and off the clock, and really try and grow people to be as good as they can be in life. And if you're watching this and you're like, all right, how do I do this? I can't afford to do this. Anytime I'm in a group forum, my response is start somewhere. Figure out what you want to represent, what you already are, and start talking about it. And then start tackling the problems. You know, my saying is little nibbles, not big bites. You know, you never get anywhere trying to do a whole lot at once. It gets you some momentum. It's follow through, and diligence that really wins you the day that when you look back on whatever you've achieved.
You know, before we wrap up, I want to leave a question for our viewers and listeners. And that is, are people following you because they have to or because they want to? Are they obligated or inspired? As a leadership coach, I specialize in helping high-achieving leaders unlock their highest levels of purpose and performance to achieve their biggest goals, both personally and professionally. But I also understand the frustration of feeling stuck, despite past success. Well, with each new level achieved, expectations rise, and the old strategies, they may not work any longer. So if you or someone you know, if you resonate with this struggle, let's connect. Visit bench-builders.com to schedule a call and start your journey towards renewed growth and fulfillment. Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
All right. Thanks for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Now, if folks are watching or listening and they say, gosh, I'd like to connect somehow with Jonathan, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, you know, if you're looking to come to work with us, you can go to our website, strackinc.com. You can also send an email to recruiting@strackinc.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us.
Got you. Now, just for those who are listening, Strack is STRACK, strackinc.com.
Yep.
Again, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Also want to thank our subscribers again for joining us. And I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Jonathan. They'll help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.